Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic. I'm excited because I got the next generation of great coaches on today. Ian Rapanick and Gerard Johnson, who played for me at Meadowbrook High School. He's my quarterback. Y'all, I'm excited to have y'all on. The podcast has been doing great, but which one of y'all want to go first? How did y'all meet?
I'll pop it off. We met at ODU when I got there. I think Ian was a GA there or a student assistant at the time. With Shane, that was at Lee Day or at Mechanicsville High School, and I was an office guy. I love to stay in the office, so I used to go in there and mess with them all the time. I used to joke with Ian about his accent at times. He's like, "God dang, Gerard." But no, those were my guys, man. I used to, anything with football, I love being around it. So it was fun being around, those assistants. And most of the time, the GAs and the student assistants were some of the funnest ones to be around. So those were my guys, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was when I want to say I was there for maybe a year or two before you got there. I could be wrong. But, the visit and all that stuff before you came – we were all there. But I mean, like he said, we were in the office all the time doing whatever we had to do. But he was always one of the guys that would come and just hang out. Always wanted to learn, in my opinion, one of the best backs to ever play at Old Dominion. I know he didn't wind up staying there, but I mean, you could see it freshman year, all of it, just balling. And it was cool, obviously seeing your success in coaching and stuff like that has been awesome to see. Seeing you get a head job and, obviously all the guys, that we worked with, Shane, all those guys I still talk to pretty frequently. So when I saw you were coming, I was pretty jacked up, man.
I seen my man Mitch in the all conference meeting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. Like it's been awesome to see like all those guys, Tanner, Shane, Bro Truck. I don't think he was there when you were there. He might have been. Everybody's kind of scattered, but seeing everybody being successful and everybody continuing to coach, it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. And then obviously seeing players like Gerard and all them, getting into coaching, I don't know if you saw Colin Casey got the GA job at Wisconsin.
Yeah, that was good, man.
It's been really cool to see. And, obviously hearing older coaches talk about like guys that they've worked with and stuff like that. Like it's almost like we're starting to get into that where you're seeing everybody kind of go different places, but you can always think about whoever. Kenny Davis is another one that I still talk to all the time. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to see all that.
So Ian, I don't know as much about you as I know Gerard. So share with the clinic, a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, where you've coached.
Right. So I went to Hickory High School in Chesapeake. We weren't the best, honestly. Growing up, I always loved football. I mean, obviously watching it with my dad. My family's huge Florida Gator fans. I know Gerard knows that. I always knew that I wanted to do something with football after I graduated high school. I knew I wasn't good enough to play college ball. I played left tackle at Hickory and was probably average at best player, to be honest with you. But I emailed our equipment guy. His name was Tommy Rapier at the time, and another fantastic person. And, when I got there for the first day of practice, I didn't know what like a student assistant was. I just saw these guys running around practice like their head was cut off, setting up drills or helping players out, coaching, things like that. And got through that season doing equipment, washing uniforms, all that stuff. And I went up to the offensive coordinator, Coach Scott, in the spring, and I was like, look, I don't know what I can do to help you. I said, but I want to coach. I didn't know a student assistant was a real thing. What can I do? And, I from the spring of my freshman year till I graduated from there, I was working for him. I worked mostly with the O-line, Coach D when Coach Scott was coaching, and Coach Z, all those guys. it was awesome. I learned way more football than I ever thought I would. Got to meet some great people along the way as well. And once I graduated from Old Dominion, I actually went back and worked with Coach Wilson at Hickory for 2 years. I ran the defense my second year, which I had never done, but he gave me a chance. I never even coached defense. All I worked with was the O-line and running backs a little bit, but that was more like off the field stuff than anything. And then worked with Coach Wilson for 2 years, and then I was actually at Perquimans for a year before, and it was a lot different of a situation than it is now, and wound up going back to National River in Suffolk and worked for Coach Conyers. And then Coach Cotton, who was a defensive line coach at ODU when I was there, got the job back at Norview and hired me to coach O-line there. And he had the PE spot, which, y'all know is gold in Virginia. So we kind of talked and said, hey, if you can give me that PE spot, I'm there. So I wound up getting the PE spot, and then he resigned after that season, and wound up getting promoted to the head coach and was there for 3 years. And then, my family loved it down here, and the athletic director here has been great to me, whether I was here or not. So, we wound up making a decision to come back. And it's been a good one. We definitely enjoy it here. A little small town football on Friday nights, place is packed, fans love it, all that stuff. It's a lot of fun. We enjoy it down here, but planning to be here for a long time.
That's awesome. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to meet you as well.
We have a mutual friend, Shane Reynolds, and we have a mutual friend, Gerard. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Derek Stout said, "What's up, G?" And I almost shout out Derek. Derek went to University of Richmond. He was hosted by our friend Randy West, your coach. Gerard. It's such a small world, and Derek was head coach at Hanover, assistant at Carolina. Now I think he's assistant at Atlee. So Gerard, for everybody watching, tell everybody a little bit about where you're from and your journey.
Obviously I played at Meadowbrook High School under your leadership. But I remember the first day. I still remember the first exact day when you reached out to me trying to ask if I was coming to Meadowbrook. I was sitting in the barbershop, in the middle of the barbershop, in the recliner chair, and I got a phone call asking, "Is this Gerard? You coming to Meadowbrook?" And I told him, "Yeah." He said, "All right, be up here next week." So I was up there doing 7-on-7 in the 8th grade at Meadowbrook, and I was nervous as heck. I thought I had all the confidence in the world until I got up there in my 8th grade year. I think the first pass, we went to the University of Richmond. The first pass I threw was an incomplete. Then the very next one was a pick six against James River High School. So from then on, I knew that I was starting all over again. So when I got to Meadowbrook, obviously Coach Taylor, he pushed me to become the person that I was in high school. Taught me a lot about not just football, but how to manage a lot of things. Playing quarterback, obviously, you have to manage not only an offense, but you got to manage a team and be able to understand who everybody is. And I think that was a big thing in how I approached the game of football, even going into college. Coach Taylor taught me how to watch film. So at Meadowbrook, I learned how to watch film. I learned how to read coverages a lot more than a lot of other people knew in high school. So when I got to college, I kind of had a sense of how to read some things. And I think
protections.
Yeah.
You knew half slide and full slide.
Yeah, so that was big. I knew how to understand that, and it was just getting the verbiage down. But at Meadowbrook, he helped me get a couple of offers, and eventually I decided to go to Old Dominion out of high school. And my first 2 years I was there, it was some of the funnest times I had in college. Not off the field, but just on the field with the guys I was playing with. Obviously, Zach Pascal was playing in the Super Bowl this week. Rick Lovato. Charles, who was the director of player personnel, I think he hosted me on my visit to ODU. He's with the Eagles. So Taylor Heinicke obviously was our quarterback. So we was a loaded team.
Was loaded, man.
Yeah, Rashard Coward, who's in the NFL right now. So we was a loaded team, and it was fun, being there with those guys. Like I said before, I was an office guy, so I loved. Me and Zach used to stay in there and watch film all the time. I always wanted to learn and get better. I love football. That's part of the reason why I'm doing it now. But more so, I love trying to get better, and I love competing. So at ODU, that was fun trying to compete. I feel like I need a change of scenery, so I ended up transferring to Norfolk State, played under Latrell Scott, and that was another great coach that I had that taught me a lot of stuff. And I think really that was Coach Taylor used to tell me all the time, eventually you're going to be a coach, man. And I used to argue him up and down and tell him I was not going to be a coach. But eventually, as I started seeing it at Norfolk State more so, I understood what he meant about why I was going to be a coach. It was just like I was naturally helping my teammates, even with me being in the starting role or whatever role I was at on the team. I always felt the urge to help my teammates around me, because at the end of the day, if they're better, if they're just as good as I want to be, then that's going to make me better. So that was a big part of my change in life, my mindset and all. And I think that's why I figured out eventually I might end up getting into coaching. But after Norfolk State, I went and did NASCAR. I tried out for the CFL.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did NASCAR, and then I went overseas for 3 years, played in Sweden, Finland, and then my last run was in Italy. And then eventually I just say, you know what, I get more of a satisfaction seeing my kids score touchdowns than I did for myself. So I knew that it was time for me to hang it up. Obviously, I was coaching at Bird with Coach Taylor for 3 years, and that really helped me a lot. It helped me grow in the coaching aspect. Being there with him and Shane and a couple other good coaches. Coach Bland was a great coach. So being around those guys, you learn a lot, not just the football aspect, but you learn how to deal with kids. You learn how to be that great coach. I had great coaches in high school, Coach Randy West, Coach Spears, Coach Jimmy Rogers, rest in peace to my guy. Talk
a little bit about Jimmy, man.
Man, Coach Rogers, that he was the guy. He was really the one that got me. He pulled me up to be the ball boy my 8th grade year. And the first game I was a ball boy, it was against Meadowbrook, was playing against Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie had Adam Morgan, who had all the quarterback records there. They had Corey Marshall. Meadowbrook at the time, we had Morgan Moses, Derek Tinsley, Andre Coble, Miko Phillips. So it was a great game to watch, and to see that atmosphere really was like, oh, one day I want to be here. But Coach Rogers, he was that guy that pulled me into that, just from my mom seeing that he was selling firewood on the side of the road, and then he ended up talking with my mom. He's like, well, why don't you come up and be the ball boy? And then from there on, he rode me all through high school. That was one of the few coaches that I had that he would check me. And it's like my mom is like, yeah, get him, coach, get him, coach. I remember vividly in the playoff game my senior year against Verona, he got into me a real good at halftime and told me, said, I don't know what you're doing right now. I don't know who's in your body, but you tell him you need to come out of there. So Coach Rogers played a big influence on my life, man. He taught that hard body. That's one thing that I preach with my kids now, is being tough. Not only just in football, but being tough in football will help you to be tough in life. And Coach Rogers was tough in life. Obviously, we seen him bite glass jars. He done laid on the tennis court when it was 100 degrees outside with no shirt on. He make you do up downs on the rock, some that ain't legal no more. But he taught me that hard body persona that I took eventually with me everywhere. I still carry it with me to this day. I mean, to be honest, my parents taught me a lot about being tough, but Coach Rogers really implemented that being tough and what it looked like. So I'm forever grateful to have had him in my life. Right before he passed, me and Coach Taylor and Shane was up there in the hospital with him. And he told me he was proud of me for, who I had become and, becoming a head coach and stuff. And so now it's just like how I teach my kids and how I approach the game with them. A lot of that is translated from him. So I owe a lot to him, and I just want to keep on showing my appreciation to him just by continuing to push my kids to be better, continue to push them and love them. He loved hard. It didn't feel like it sometimes, but he loved hard. He'll do anything for you. He'll take his clothes off his back and give them to you. He'll give you his last dollar if he could. So, I really appreciate what he did for me, and just like any other coaches that I had. But Coach Rogers himself was a special one for me.
Yeah, man. I don't know if y'all have ever heard Mike Tyson talk about, how he studied fighters. He loved fighters, and he loved war. Like, I love coaches, man. I studied coaches. Mike Tyson says he studied Achilles, Charlemagne, Napoleon, man. And I studied coaches. I love coaches. And Jimmy was the best, man. And another guy, man, I'm going to bring up his name right now. That's Coach Bill D.
Oh, man. Coach D was the man.
He's one of the goats.
Coach D was the man.
Ian, talk a little bit about Coach D.
Yeah, I mean, that's another guy who, I'm eternally grateful for. With him, it was he's going to bust your tail on the field. He's going to make you the best player that you can possibly be. But like Gerard said, man, you knew that he loved you and would do absolutely anything for you. And kind of getting to know him and work with him for 2 years, I guess it was 3. I don't know exactly how long he was coaching the O-line at the time. But, sitting in his office and watching film and, once he felt comfortable with me, he would tell stories about all these guys at Phoebus. And, obviously the best high school football coach in Virginia high school league history. And I don't think that that's really an argument personally, but I mean, one of the best people once you get to know him too. But you talk about a tough son of a gun. I remember us being out at winter workouts at whatever time in the morning it was.
5:25.
Right. There's snow on the practice field. And he came up to me and said, Ian, don't ever put your hands in your pockets. And I was like, why? He was like, because that ain't tough. And to this day, it doesn't matter how cold it is outside. It doesn't matter if, we played in the third round a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was 23 at kickoff, and never put my hands in my pockets. And I tell my players, never put your hands in your pockets. I don't let them wear hair warmers, none of that, because of him. And, when I was coaching at Hickory is when he got the Oscar Smith job, and he called me, and I had an opportunity to coach with him, and I didn't take it, and I still kick myself to this day. I remember when we played Oscar Smith, and he was calling the offense, and I was calling the defense at Hickory, and I talked to him pregame, and he said, Ian, I'm struggling, and it just broke my heart. He said, I'm going to chemo, and then I'm leaving chemo and going straight to football practice. And, I mean, just seeing him, and Gerard, both of y'all know how tough and how hard-nosed that guy was, but he just you could tell that it was taking a toll on him. But, I mean, you're talking about the best to ever do it, but I guarantee you talk to anybody that he's coached, you talk to anybody that he's been around, and you automatically know when you say his name, everybody's going to talk about how great of a person he was, how great of a coach he was, and how much he loved everybody that worked for him and played for him. I tell stories about him all the time. Everything that he taught me, I mean, is obviously extremely invaluable. And, he is part of the big reason why I am how I am now. Not only as a coach, but with my family, with, everything, because, he wasn't going to take things away from his family to be a football coach, but he was always prepared, always had a plan, always stuck to the plan and just got after it. As old as he was when he was at ODU, he was still running up and down the sideline, chest bumping kids, all that stuff. But you knew if you needed him, it didn't matter what time, where he was, any of that, he was there. He was there. And, it's tough, especially, now that he's passed away, and knowing that I had an opportunity to coach with him and work for him specifically, it still kind of haunts me a little bit, to be 100% honest, because I just wish that I would there was a situation that happened in Norview, and I wish that I would have been able to call him and say, Coach D, what would you do? It's happened to me a couple times, but one of the best people you could ever ask for. And I think you were there, Gerard, when the funniest story I have of him was we were playing. I don't even remember who we were playing. I was up in the press box. We were beating the brakes off of somebody, and Rick Lovato was on the sideline snapping. And Coach D walked in front of the snap, and it hit him in the head.
Oh, man.
and all I remember was Coach Scott coming on the headset and saying, I think Bill had a heart attack. And I was like, what? So I'm in the press box. I'm looking at the sideline trying to figure out where he's at. And I think it was me and Shane in the press box. We were like taking our headsets off to come down to try and help. And so, they get him up. Marty's talking to him, the athletic trainer. He's sitting on the bench, whatever. And Rick comes up and he's like, did you walk in front of the snap? And I mean, obviously this guy's a starting NFL long snapper. He snapped with some juice, and it hit him right in the side of the head, and he didn't come off the field. He didn't do anything. He got right back up, sat on the bench for a couple of minutes while the trainer looked at him, and he was back coaching his tail off, I would say within a couple of minutes. And Tommy, our equipment guy at the time, got him a helmet made that said aim here with a target on the side. And he had it in his office the rest of the time that I worked at ODU. But, I mean, it just shows you what kind of person he is, right? He gets hit in the head with a ball that's probably flying, 25, maybe 30 miles an hour. And he's finishing coaching the game, even though we're beating the team by God knows how much. But he was one of a kind. I think that's really the only way to describe him. He was one of a kind, but I mean, he knew every player on the team's name. It didn't matter if they played O-line, DB. When you walked into his office, he was going to give you the answer that you should hear that you might not want to hear. But he's going to tell you the fact, and you're going to get better from it no matter what. There was plenty of times that I messed up on something. I remember there was a spring game, and I was signaling the offense, and I signaled something wrong, or I was like late in getting a signal in. I mean, he ripped me, but again, all it did was make us better. But that's a guy that I will never in my life forget, ever.
Yeah, Gerard, talk about when you first met Coach D. And
Coach D, I first met Coach D at Meadowbrook.
Right.
Originally, I think it was Coach Cotton that was recruiting me. And then I think they switched. I think Coach Cotton ended up leaving. Somehow Coach D ended up being a recruiter, and I knew Coach Taylor and knew him prior to that. So I was just reading the relationship that they had. But when he first came in there, we were sitting in the office. He came to visit Meadowbrook. We were sitting there talking. I could tell he was one of those Coach Rogers kind of guys. Even when I got to ODU, sometimes it'll be times where, I wasn't playing the best of my ability, and he'll come up and let me know, Gerard, they're going to replace you if you don't step up. And he'll tell me that all the time. And like Ian said, he might not tell you what you want to hear, but he's going to tell you what you need to hear. Right. So when I met Coach D in the office, he told me exactly what it was. It was only two coaches that caught on to this. Coach Taylor used to text me every night when a school was coming in and tell me where my Nike boots, because I look a little bit taller. And there's only two coaches that caught it, and both of them were on the staff at ODU. And Coach D was the first one. And he said, how tall are you? I said 5'10". He said, no, you're not. He said, the boots will add 2 inches to you. You're about 5'8", 5'9". But it's okay. You can run, so it's cool.
That's right.
But now, Coach D, like you said, he was a great guy. I know I was roommates every year at ODU with linemen. So, I'll get to hear all the stories of how the meetings go. Obviously, I was roommates with Tyler Fisher for my last 2 semesters there. And, me and Fish coming from the same area, we kind of had a different bond. But Fisher come to the room and tell me, man, I know Coach D about to get in me in this meeting, because it's like after the game, exactly how the meeting's going to be the next day on how you play, and which coach is going to get into you the most. And I know the linemen used to get it bad sometimes. And I'm like, dang, Coach D getting into him. But at the end of the day, when you think about it, all the linemen that came out of that group, Tyler Fisher ended up being a coach. He's now at UConn as an academic advisor. Cullen Casey came out that group. Who else we had? We had a bunch of linemen that came out that group that's doing a lot of great things. Nick Clark.
All successful in life, though.
Yeah, and so it goes to show who he was as a person. You know, sometimes, like you said, we may not want to hear some of the stuff that the coach is telling us, but you can tell how much of an impact that coach has once the players leave. You can't never tell sometimes when we're there with the coaches because, you know, sometimes you like, man, I do not like this coach or this coach get on my nerves or whatever the case may be. But once you leave and you see how the kid, how everybody is doing now in life, it's just a testament to who he was and what he was teaching was real life situations and not just football. Because everybody now is good for life, not just football. So, like I said, Tyler's an academic advisor. So that has nothing to do with, I mean, obviously he'll work with football kids, but that has nothing to do with playing. So that's showing that he spoke a different type of level. And when he passed, you can just see how the impact was again, how everybody was sad. You hear all these stories about how Coach D was. Like he said, the story when I remember that story when Coach D got when Rick was snapping the ball and hit him in the side of the head, and I was like, "There's no way he's getting back up," and he was right back at it. I seen him fall in practice before. It was like somebody's trying to help him up. He was like, "Get off me, get off me." he don't want nobody to help him up. So I love Coach D to death, man. He gave me an opportunity to play college football. He believed in me every second that I was at ODU with him. He'll always tell me. He even told me he loved me all the time when I came in there. And I guess maybe because, you know, he was one of the ones that recruited me. But, you know, I'll go sit in there and talk with Coach D because sometimes, like you said, I wanted to hear what I needed to hear versus what, you know, everybody wants to tell you. So I love Coach D. And like Ian said, I would have loved to even had the opportunity to coach with him or against him. Either one, I would have took the opportunity to take the field with him at any chance I could after I left ODU. So it was none but respect for Coach D.
You know the other thing about him too, and I don't know if we need to move on or not, but
nah, man, we can talk about Coach D all day. I don't care if this is all we talk about.
That dude recruited his tail off.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You talk about the players that he got to come to ODU. Tyree Lee, who was the best running back, one of the best running backs in the state. Colby Goodwin, who's playing overseas. Paul Morant, who's playing overseas. I mean, all those guys, obviously the Phoebus pipeline and all that, but it didn't matter. He was able to relate to guys that you just walk up and you see them standing next to him and you're like, there's no way that they could get along, right? Like he's like older guy. He likes his country music. He likes his whiskey, all that stuff. But he could relate to anybody that walked up to him. And, I mean, you know, obviously, especially now, I mean, that's something that you just don't really see much. And he could do it. He did it at CNU. He did it at ODU. He did it at Oscar Smith. But, I mean, everybody that played for that dude would run through a brick wall for him. And, I mean, the relationships that guy was able to build, you know, while he was coaching or, you know, in life. I mean, I still talk to his wife every once in a while. I'll message her on Facebook, you know, on like the anniversary when he passed and stuff like that. And, you know, his daughter is in high school now, which is crazy. I remember her running around the office, you know, real young. And, I mean, the impact, like Gerard said, man, the impact that guy has had on me and so many other people, it was the biggest funeral I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was unbelievable the amount of people who came and told stories. And even after, you know, standing outside and hearing people talk, you know, walking through crowds of people, I mean, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And, I mean, that was a guy who, you know, again, I would love to be able to talk to one more time. And, you know, now that I'm a little bit older and, you know, I probably would be able to have a relationship with him that we could just sit down and have a beer and talk. Like, I couldn't imagine, you know, the amount of stories that I didn't hear, you know, that I would love to hear.
Well, I'm going to tell one right now that he told me. Something happened something happened at Meadowbrook. And I know this is going to be hard for everybody out there to believe, but our players got into a fight.
Gerard, was it you?
Nah, I can't even remember there were so many fights. But we got into a fight, and I told Coach D, I said, Coach, our players got into a fight. He said, Troy, who were they fighting? I was like, they was beating up some kids in the neighborhood. He goes, that's good. He goes, if they'll fight together, they'll win together. Then he told me a story, and he goes, when I was at Phoebus, there were some guys in the neighborhood. They was picking on the JV team.
I remember that.
He's like, the JV team came back and told the varsity guys that these guys in the neighborhood was picking on them. So then the varsity guys went into the neighborhood and beat up those guys. And he said, I knew we were going to be pretty good then. I can't do a very good imitation of his voice, but I know his voice.
Bad. It's really not bad.
And then here's another one. I called him up. There's a team that we hated, and we didn't do too well against them. So I asked him, I said, Coach, how did y'all start beating Hampton? And he said, Troy, we stopped making it a big deal. We didn't change anything. We didn't change our offense. We didn't change our defense. We didn't put in no special plays. We just treated it like another game, and we just did what we did better than them. And, Mike Smith, who I guess he's won 12 state championships, him and Coach D, they weren't friends. But, man, I'm just going to share something with y'all. Mark Johnson just put in the chat, what's up, Coach G? Proud of you. Mark's one of the best people, man.
I work with some people at the building right now that know him.
Everybody knows him. He's into politics, man.
You know exactly who I'm talking about, too.
It's crazy, man. But, like, one of the things I'm teaching my class is I listen to Lex Friedman and Mr. Beast. And, Ian, you don't know me too well, but I'm a little different.
Right.
I was listening
we
to
all are a little bit.
Yeah, I was listening to Lex Friedman and Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast said this, y'all. And I'm getting emotional, man. He said, surround yourself with people that you want to be like. It's a cheat code to life.
Right.
So I'm gonna say that again. Surround yourself with people you want to be like. It's a cheat code to life. And we always used to say, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And it's true. I mean, dude, being, a 45-year-old coach, and I don't know how old y'all are, man, but to be able to meet Mike Smith and to meet, Bill D and Coach Bedwell and Coach Kane and these guys, man, they're legends, and Coach McPhee and Lou Anderson. And I mean, these guys they're the GOATs, man. And, I was just so blessed, man. I've always been so blessed. Gerard knows that. So, what's y'all's belief in that?
I believe that 100%. And you always told me that when I was in high school as well too. And then the older I got, a lot of other people say it too. So the first thing I did when I got the head coaching job, I wanted to talk to the people that I knew that were successful. Obviously, Coach Taylor, I got to go to him. And I was lucky enough to be in a situation where another coach that was very successful is my principal now. So, and Mr. Just.
Let's talk a little bit about that whole process.
So originally, and see, I'm a firm believer in if you want some, no matter whatever's delayed is not denied. So, I'm a persistent person. If I want some, I'm gonna go get that, whether you tell me no or not. So I applied. I think I reached out to Coach Taylor and asked him, do we think I should apply for the Caroline job? And then he told me who was the principal out there. So I applied for the job. A couple weeks went by. Well, I reached out, see if they had got my application. Then a couple weeks went by. I didn't hear anything. I knew a couple other people that applied for that job. So I reached out next if they had heard anything back, and they said they did. So I was like, dang, man, I guess I ain't getting no call back. And so that I guess, those people didn't want that job precisely. I know one of them, End up getting another head coach, another spot in my man Shane. So they reached back out, but in the process, I was still calling. I think I got on their nerves. I called their phone. I called the AD. I called Coach Just about 4 or 5 times within a 2 to 3 week span. I left voicemails, sent emails. I did it all. Because I really just wanted that job bad. I knew that if I got an opportunity to be a head coach, one, I like challenge, so it would have been a different area for me, coming from being a player and an assistant coach to, being a head coach so young. I knew that would be a challenge for me, but that was a challenge I was willing to, go and attack. And at the time, I was up in Pennsylvania, so I was really trying to get back down here anyway. And I seen that job open up. I asked Coach Taylor, should I apply? He told me to apply. He knew the principal there was Coach Just. So then they called back and said they wanted to do my interview. And I went in the interview. I didn't know too much of what to expect, but I knew who I was. I know how passionate I am about the things that I do know. So I just went in there. I was myself. The same person that they see me be around the building, the same person that was in that interview. I went in there with high energy. They put me on the board. I was able to, draw plays on the board. That's not hard for me. But the main thing was my passion towards, the other things, academics, the community, how I envisioned this area to be. Much respect to Coach Billy Mills, but I told him that this could be an area just like that with one high school, one middle school. We got 3 elementary schools. So I knew that this can be a special area, it's just with a little care and love behind it. So after my first interview, I didn't know if I was going to get it or not. I didn't know if I was going to get a call back, but I just went in there and shot my shot. Then they called me back, told me how much they liked my energy and stuff in the interview. And then I did a second interview again. And then I guess they reached out to, the people that I put down as references, Latrell Scott. He even reached out to one of my other teammates from Norfolk State. That Mr. Just reached out to one of my teammates from Norfolk State that happened to be one of his players in high school, Dante Hainsworth, who was a great athlete. He was one of the most athletic kids I ever seen in my life. So those panned out. And then they called me back in a couple of days. I did my second interview on my birthday. So I was like, And then it was something about it. We had to drive back up to Pennsylvania. A little quick story. We had to drive back up to Pennsylvania. The traffic, if you know anything about Virginia, you go up 95. Once you get to about Fredericksburg, that's when traffic started getting heavy. So we took a detour, got off the exit, the Caroline exit. So we had to come past the high school to get to 301. And I was telling my fiance at the I said, look, it'll be crazy if I end up over here at Caroline. And then showing up a couple of days later, they called me back and told me I had the job. And I can't express how much I'm grateful that, Coach Just took an opportunity on me. He didn't have to, a person with no head coaching experience. And I was young. So, I know a lot of people question that when I first got the job. But, for me, I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of, and I know that if I don't know something, I'm going to reach out to the right ones to make sure I do know how to do this. And 2 people that I lean on heavy, actually, it's a couple people I lean on heavy. Coach Taylor, Coach Johnson at Highland Springs. I had some great battles against him as a player. While he was coaching at Highland Springs earlier when I was in high school, and has been successful since. Coach Scott down in Petersburg. Coach Scott was he was one of the ones that tried to get my family to move back to Petersburg so I can come down to Petersburg and play. So he's one of the guys that I reach out to even to this day to ask, how would you handle certain situations, or how would you do this and that? So for me, I'm a big person, and I can't do this by myself. So I'm going to lean on my village that I had around me, and knowing the coaches that I've seen in the area that's been successful. I'm like, I'm not a prideful person. If I feel like I want to know something, if I want to pick your brain, I reached out to Billy Mills before, Coach Billy Mills down at Dinwiddie, asked him, can I come talk with him? So I'm big on reaching out to those guys to help, because I want my program to be successful, and I want my kids to be successful. And all these coaches that I named been having successful kids in their program. Coach Taylor, obviously, I've watched him put multiple kids in the school. It's been kids that, some people may question, how did he get in school? But, Coach Taylor, with the relationships that he's built, that's one thing. Another thing that taught me how to build relationships with coaches, how important that was. Even it was a situation where I was getting recruited one time in high school, in a school that I probably thought I won't never go to. I had dropped the flyer outside of the classroom after I left out of there, and luckily he seen it before the coach did, and he told me not to do that no more because, and this is a message that I preach to my kids now, you never know who's going to be where. Obviously, you see people at the smaller schools, they'll be at a school, at a bigger school within the next year before you know it. So I'm big on, not burning any bridges. Coach Price, that's at Virginia Tech, the defensive line coach. I've always been keeping in contact with him. When I see him at clinics, I talk to him. He knows exactly who I am. I know exactly who he is. We can have real conversations. Coach Burton from ODU, Coach Scott, both of them were two first coaches that I had come through the building. And at the time, I probably ain't have no kids that they were looking at, but they just came in just, to show their face and to show kids, that he has those connections. So if you do what you're supposed to do, we'll come back. Who Coach Henson, that was at University of Richmond just last year, he came through here. So he remembered me, but I just tried my hardest not to burn any bridges. And, I to this day, I still do. Any coach that I ever had, I try to learn something from them. I feel like I try to be a sponge as much as possible. I know I'm not going to be perfect. I know I'm not going to be what they are, but, I try to find my own lane and, pick things from what they gave into me, what they instilled in me. I can't express how much I appreciate Coach Taylor. I know he spoke on my behalf before, but he taught me a lot of stuff that, it's just, it's unsaid material that you won't understand until you get in those situations like, oh, this what he was talking about. And so I preach that a lot. He used to always talk about 3.0. You get a 3.0, I get you into school. 3.0 will get you into school. So I tell my kids now, 3.0, and we can get you somewhere. You don't even have to be the best athlete in the world, but a 3.0, we can get you somewhere. It may not be where you want to be, but we can get you somewhere. Another thing he taught me, when we get in tough game situations, while I'm on the field, just remaining calm, having that energy on the sideline. If anybody watched me coach this year, I'm a very energetic guy, and a lot of that comes from him too. I'm a very animated guy, but I get into it. I'm passionate. I love my kids. I'll celebrate with them, go up, jump with them. I have handshakes with them. I listen to their music before the game, whatever it takes to build that relationship, so that they know that it's real with me. It's nothing that I'm doing for a camera because we don't have no cameras out here. But a lot of that comes from, Coach Taylor. So I appreciate all the coaches that, have benefited anything or gave me any word, in being in that office. I learned so much about watching film. I don't know if you remember when we used to get the NFL film, and I couldn't wait to get in there. I was like, we got any more NFL film? Because NFL film, you got the hashes tighter. So you learning the game from a different perspective. Coach Z taught me how to read safeties and tell where the blitz coming from. So when that happened, I learned the game was a lot slower on reading safeties. Safeties can't lie. No matter how athletic they are, they can't lie, but so much. So Coach Z taught me that. Coach K that I had, that was my running back coach my freshman year, who was at Ohio State with Terrell Pryor, Braxton Miller, and all those guys, Carlos Hyde.
He's in the league.
Yeah, he was with an elite group of kids. So Coach
K, Kerr, right?
Yes, yeah, Coach Kerr.
Oh man, I forgot about him.
Yeah, Coach Kerr, he taught me a lot as well.
That was hilarious.
He taught me pass protection. He taught me it's one thing that he taught me, and I talk about this all the time, that it took me so long to master. But I eventually got it, and that was a one-step cut. And the reason he was telling me that is because I used to take 2 or 3 steps to make a cut because I was so used to outrunning everybody in high school. And he said, if you can get a 1-step cut down, you'll make a lot more people miss and you'll get a lot more yards. And, I took that and I teach that with my running backs now. So, I try to be a sponge as much as possible.
So, Ian, talk a little bit about Zach Kerr. I saw Zach coach at JMU on Everett Wither's staff, and that's the only time I've ever left to practice, and I felt sorry for the players. I mean, it was vicious.
The bat.
I mean, it was Urban Meyer's staff.
With the tape wrapped around it for man.
He had a lacrosse stick with a boxing glove on it, I think it was.
Oh my God!
And
you gotta tape it with the
running backs will run through the bags, and I mean, he's like home run derby swinging at him. But I don't remember us putting the ball on the ground much.
Nah,
I'll tell you that much. That dude, you talk about being a little different. That dude was a little different, but. I mean, he'd have you crying, laughing, and another guy who just loved his players. And it's crazy to think of him because I don't know what age he was, but I think of him.
He was young.
You and thinking, man, this dude's coaching the Titans now. Like,
yes,
it's wild. But that guy, he was at ODU, I think, for a year after he left Ohio State. He knew Eric, and they wound up hiring to be the he helped with special teams too, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yep.
But you talk about a guy with energy.
Yeah.
That guy was all over the place. I mean, everywhere. And another guy who loved his players, and it was evident. But I remember one day we had finished practice, and everybody had kind of gone up to the office and was getting ready to watch film or whatever, and Zach was out working out. So I walk out, going towards the practice field, and back then you had to go through the locker room and all that stuff. And they had little pieces of plastic in the fence so you couldn't really see anything. So I come around the corner, and I'm watching Zach work out, and he's literally pass setting like 25 yards down the field. And he finally gets done. I'm like, yo, come on, we're going to watch film. And he's like, yeah, I started doing this thing with my workout because I got bored. So I just go through every position group's individual drills. And I was like, what? He was like,
that's
yeah.
what Mark Megnan used to do.
He was like, I was running routes right before that. But you talk about, you remember how big that dude's legs were, G?
He used to say he used to put peanut butter on his calves to make them grow.
He was crazy, but another awesome dude. And, I think I was working at Hickory when he went to JMU, but, I mean, his voice was always, basically gone because he had so much energy, yelling and screaming all the time. But, I mean, he took a lot of guys, and that running back room was loaded at that time too. I mean, obviously the whole team was, but, you and Colby and all those guys, and, he worked his rotation, but, I mean, he coached the last guy in just as hard as he coached the first guy in. And, another thing that, obviously being fortunate to be in that program and seeing and meeting guys like him, Eric Forrest was one of the smartest guys, not even just football, but life. One of the smartest guys I've ever met in my entire life. And Zach was a lot like him. Those guys were just, taught you how to work hard, but I mean, we had a lot of fun. And Zach was a big part of that because he was hilarious, but he was always ready to go. Again, always had a plan. It's crazy the things that you learn, being around a staff like that with so many different people, different kinds of people that you don't even realize that you picked up until a couple years later.
Yeah.
That's to me one of the coolest things about coaching is, I may be talking to a kid about something they do wrong, in class or whatever, and I'm saying things that I've heard, Coach Wilder say, or I'm saying things that I heard, whatever coaches, that I've been fortunate enough to been around say. So that's a fortunate part of being around some guys who have obviously seen a lot of football, but know a lot of football too. And Zach was a special one, man. I miss that dude. It's funny I haven't thought about him in a long time since you mentioned him just then. Mm-hmm. You said Coach K, and I was like, Coach K, who was that?
Yeah, that was my dude, man.
Zach Kerr
he pushed you too, man. One thing he pushed, he used to have a way And he didn't. I think he started realizing that I was that way. He'll tell me I couldn't do something,
Right.
and I'll be like, and I'll think for a second, and I'm like, you know what? I approve it. And I think one thing, we was getting beat pretty bad at this point when we was playing UNC, and I'll never forget. It was
You
like
worked a long run that game too, didn't you?
so. The
You
thing
scored on
is,
one.
it was a rule of thumb. Well, we knew at ODU because of how deep that running back room was. If you put that ball on the ground, you were not getting back in that game. And one thing I messed up. I put the ball on the ground in the first quarter. Trey Boston, who's playing, I don't know who he's playing for now, but he's still in the NFL as a safety. He hit me right on the ball. Ball came out. Even my mom, I looked at her in the stand. She said, "It's over with," and I knew it. But at halftime, I guess we was down by a pretty decent amount. So I guess we were just going ahead and getting ready for the next year. It was the last game of the season, so that was our transition year. So I guess we was getting ready for that Conference USA year. So he was like, "They're gonna put you back in the game. You better not fumble it no more." And I told him, I don't know what made me come out of this, but I said, "I bet you I go for 100 yards for the game." And he said, "Yeah, okay." And literally the first run play went 80 yards. I got caught by Jabari Price.
Oh, I remember watching that kid on film. That
Man,
dude,
that hurt my heart. I was actually showing some of my kids that earlier today, and to this day that hurts my heart. But
I still remember that picture that was up in the office of you running down the sideline.
So it was fun, man. Being in a game like that, it was loaded. UNC was loaded that year. They had Ryan Switzer, Marquise Williams was the quarterback, Eric Ebron was the tight end. They had another receiver that ended up going pro. They had a DN that was pretty jacked up. So they was a loaded team. So for the fact that I was able to pull that off, it had a lot to do with Coach K. And the reason I was able to make that run is because it was a one-step cut, a one-step cut. And I ended up getting it by the end of the season. But, just to see how hype he was, when I did come to the sideline, it shows, like he said, how much he cares about his players. Like you said, we had a deep running back room. So, carries was limited. So in my mindset, I'm like, all right, if I know carries are limited, I know just about every carry I get, I got to try to score. And so I took that mindset because he said, look, I can't guarantee you'll get another carry, but if you go score, you probably stay in the game. So I tried to keep that mindset even. I tell my running back now, if you score, we don't have to worry about nothing else.
Right.
So Ian, I know you got to go at 6 o'clock, but talk a little bit about Taylor Heinicke. Being there at ODU and on Wickham, and then Shane, getting to work with Taylor.
He ain't got enough time.
I love Shane Reynolds to death. That dude, you talk about. I know I'm not talking about Taylor, but I gotta give him some love too. I still talk to him fairly frequently. You talk about a funny guy, and I know I keep saying everybody's funny, but when you're in the office for 15 hours a day, you got to find a way to make it a little bit more enjoyable. And I was talking to Kenny Davis a couple of weeks ago. I said, man, we didn't realize how much fun we had because it was just a grind nonstop. And now, like, you kind of think back about some of the stuff that happened or people said or whatever. And anyway, Taylor was – the day that dude walked on campus, you knew he was special. He came in, and I'm not sure that he weighed any more than 150 pounds. He might have been, probably closer to the 100 side. But the way that he could throw the football was just like, we had never seen before. And, I say we, but everybody in the building, obviously Thomas DeMarco, the starter before he got hurt and Taylor started, was, he was the starter when they started the program. The people used to chant his name in the stadium. Like, he was that guy. And I've never seen a dude throw a football as fast and as hard as that kid could. I remember watching him pregame. He would like throw and warm ups like he was in a lineup, like he was pitching a baseball. And I mean, it was just rocking. So he gets hurt and does something to his ankle. He's out for a couple weeks or whatever. And I still remember we were playing Richmond at home, and Taylor gets in, and I was standing on the sideline, and I can't remember exactly who it was. It was a tight end that he was really, really close with. They might have been roommates. And he said, "Hey, if you ever get in trouble, throw the ball to Prentice Gill." He was a receiver who was coaching at Arizona State for a while. I think he's at IMG now. But he dropped back the first play. We call, I don't remember what exactly it was, but we're on like the 25-ish yard line, not quite the red zone going in. And he threw, I mean, I want to say like his first 2 or 3 balls that he threw were completions, and one of them was for a touchdown. And at the time, you know, obviously we're all concerned because Thomas DeMarco's the guy and all that, but you know, we were like, dang, we may be all right. Like, we don't have to worry about losing any games because this kid's got to figure it out. And, you know, he was special. And obviously, you know, he's playing in the NFL. He still is. And, you know, the thing with him, too, is, you know, him and Gerard were a lot alike when it came to us guys who were, you know, not necessarily not coaches per se, or, you know, guys who did the little stuff behind the scenes and all that. You know, Taylor would come in and just talk. And him and Shane actually had a great relationship. He would come up and talk to Shane and, you know, hang out for a while before meetings or after meetings or whatever it was. But, you know, that kid, he had the keys is what I say. And, I tell my quarterback, if you want the keys, you need to do exactly what we coach you to do. And that kid did. I remember, you know, there was drives that Taylor would call the whole drive. You know, there was times that, you know, he had the ability to check everything, change everything. And, you know, 99.9% of the time when he checked something, it was good. You know, that game that against New Hampshire, he had like 700 something yards of offense. And
I was a recruit at that game.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah.
So I remember sitting in the press box and thinking like, man, we're really scoring some points today. Like, you know, but at that time, we were scoring points every week. And I remember we got back into the locker room after the game, and Coach Wickham had the stat sheet, and he walked up to Coach Scott, who I was standing next to, and he was like, "Look at this." And he points to the passing yards, and it's whatever ridiculous amount of yards it was. And he walks up to Taylor, and Taylor's just like, "There's no way that's right." But I mean, you talk about a guy who, you know, had the ability, but also the work ethic to manipulate any kind of play, any kind of defender, anything like that. You know, he was one of the smartest players I think I've ever seen. You know, obviously it's a lot different coaching high school now, but I mean, the ability that kid had to extend plays, the ability that kid had to, like I said, manipulate safeties, everybody. I mean, and the thing was, too, is it wasn't just him throwing the ball. I mean, he wasn't like the most athletic dude running it, but, you know, he made guys miss, and you know, he was smart. And but the biggest thing, I guess, probably the biggest respect that I can give him from day one to day whatever, he never changed, ever. And Gerard, you probably say the same. I mean, I never saw ego. I never saw anything like that. And then, you know, he came back obviously his sophomore year, and he was, you know, no doubt the guy. And he had gained a little bit of weight, and that's when, you know, he started really rolling. But, you know, you talk about a guy that if the score was tied, best case scenario is that dude has the ball in his hands. And, you know, I remember we played at JMU to win the conference that one year. And we played awful the first half. I think we were down by – Gerard, were you there then?
No, I wasn't at that. I wasn't there. That was the year before I got there.
I think we were down by 14 and a half.
That's when Larry caught the game winner.
Right. There was no concern. You know what I mean? Which, you know, I mean, y'all know as coaches, if you don't have to worry about any kind of lead or being down by whatever, and you know you got the best player in the country with a ball in their hands at the FCS level, I mean, we're good. You know, and that place was rocking that night. It was rocking, and we went up there and beat them. And, you know, I guess as they say, the rest is history. But he's special. He is special. And, you know, they used to call him Magic Man. and it's obvious why he's still doing it in the NFL level. But Coach Wickham, to kind of answer the second part of your question, Coach Wickham was very different, but he could coach quarterbacks better than anything I've ever seen. That dude, I'm glad I got light switches in my office. I don't got to worry about it cutting off. But you talk about a guy that was extremely vocal. I remember they used to meet in the staff meeting room, the quarterbacks did, and there was a hallway, obviously where the staff room was, and then there was a perpendicular hallway where all like the GAs and student assistants sat. And I mean, as soon as the quarterback meeting started, you hear him like slamming his feet into the ground, talking about drops. You hear him screaming and yelling. I remember Tyler Clark, who played quarterback. He's from Grassfield, transferred to Norfolk State also with G and them. And he has, he didn't play much as a walk-on, and he wasn't being coached a whole lot. Wickham used to say that he coaches Taylor and everybody else better pay attention. But he had these four notebook pages full of what he called Wickhamisms, and it was just random crazy things that Wickham would say, and I still have it on my phone to this day. And it was just the craziest stuff. I remember, there was a ball that somebody threw in practice, and he was like, "That needs to be the last throw the last time you ever touch football. Just retire, don't come back." But I mean, that was just him. And obviously now he's doing really well at Buffalo and all that. But, man, you talk about a guy who was, had a different way of coaching as far as, like, terminology and all that stuff that he would say. But, he got Taylor, obviously Taylor had God-given talent and the work ethic. But, does Taylor become what he does without Wickham? I don't know. But they were very, very tight also. And then especially, once Taylor's dad passed away, they became, very, very tight. And, I know Wickham really helped him through all that. But, I mean, you're talking at the FCS level, a once-in-a-generation type player. I mean, he was – I can't really think of another word to describe him as special. I don't know. G, you got something? You got a better word? I don't know.
I mean, I got to play next to him. I was lucky enough to play next to him, and it's different watching it, from the sideline, because I got to see him do it from the sideline too. But being in the game next to him, how fast he was able to dissect the defense before the play started. Obviously, people knew we went no huddle, so we never got in the huddle at ODU. The time that he had to tell, like, he knew exactly where the blitzes were coming from. He knew exactly what defense they were in. He knew exactly where the safety's going to roll at. Obviously, that's a test from, him watching so much film and how much hours he put into it. He'll tell me, and it got to a point where I was in the game with him because I wanted to know exactly what he wanted to know. I always thought like a quarterback, and I think Coach Taylor told me this before. Know every position, and if you know what every position has to do, it slows everything up for you. So I knew I wanted to know exactly what he was thinking. Obviously, I knew I wasn't gonna know everything he was thinking, but I wanted to know exactly what he was seeing, so that when he was able to tell me, "Hey, watch this coming, G," and I'm like, "Oh, I know he's coming because we seen that on film."
Right.
But he can dissect the defense fast. We'll get to the line of scrimmage. He'll scan, and then he'll be like, "All right, I got it." And it was like that was probably the best. I know it ain't no problem. That was the best quarterback I ever played with in my life. He was definitely special.
Was it you? I remember one time we were coming out of a timeout. I don't remember who we were playing. I think it was you that was in, and he lined up. He told the running back, like, go out like we're in empty.
Yeah. It was me.
I thought it was you. He was like, go out like we're in empty, and I think we were in doubles.
Yeah.
Is what the formation was supposed to be. So he sends G out to line up a receiver. And, I mean, at the timeout was, however long, and we didn't take all of it. So we're lined up getting ready to go, and he sends them back out. Defense gets their personnel and all that stuff, and I think we were running like inside zone or something like that, and we wound up scoring on it. And I was just like, dude, like, because on the headset, like, Coach Scott's like, what is he doing? Why is he doing that? Like, that's not the call. We're running the ball or something. And and he brought you back right before the snap, run the ball. And I mean, obviously as a coach, you kind of think about stuff like that now, and you're just like, wow, like he really understood what we were trying to do and, how we were trying to do it. But yeah, he was special is the only word I can think of.
Yeah, he's definitely, like he said, he never changed. I went up to practice this year. I took 2 of my kids up there, and some people, they'll make it, and sometimes they'll start acting a little different.
Right.
I called his name. I mean, it was a bunch of people trying to get his autograph, and I called his name. I was like, T. Hine, and he looked. He said, "Come down here, man." And my kids got excited because I used to tell them, I try to tell them, I'm like, I played with some of the people I played with. And so for them to see that, they was like, "Oh, you really know him?" And I was like, "Yeah." So he signed my kids an autograph, and once he told me, he's like, "Love you, bro." He's like, "Hey, next time just come down to the field." And the kids was like, they was in awe. Like, that's all they were talking about. They got to see Fred Smoot. They don't know who Fred Smoot is. They got to see, I forgot who else was out there from the Redskins. There was a couple older guys that played. I knew who they were, but my kids didn't, but they knew who he was.
Right.
And, and the fact that he did that, he signed out their glove over a lot of people that was already in line. But I seen him do that at ODU.
Right.
At one time after the spring game, he was signing autographs, and it was only one other person I've seen have a line like this, and that was Stephon Diggs at University of Maryland. After his spring game, it went viral that he had fans all the way across the field lined up from 50 yards from the sideline to the other sideline to get his autograph. And we did the same thing, and Taylor had people lined up from one sideline to the other sideline to get his autograph, and he smiled at everybody. He autographed everybody. He whatever they came up there, he took pictures. He did all that stuff. So it wasn't like he was a Hollywood guy on campus. You ain't gonna see him going around not talking to nobody. He was a pretty low guy for the most part throughout the daytime. He hung with who he hung with. But if he was around you, he's not gonna go about your business. He's gonna talk to you. He's gonna smile. He used to joke with me in the middle of the game. And I'm like, this dude is crazy. And then he'll go out there and make a play. I remember we played UTEP, and we was down at halftime or something. And, some things weren't gelling with our offense that day. I don't know what was going on. And they asked him, what did he want to do? He said, just let me run it. And I was like, and when he said that, I said, yep, we about to get back in the game.
Just let me run it.
Hey,
man, I've had a lot of fun with y'all, man. We've been on here an hour and 7 minutes.
Look, I'll talk all night about. I mean, you've done a great job of obviously finding things that we can both talk about. It's been awesome to catch up a little bit, man.
No, definitely, awesome. man. You don't know how much, like he said, those times at ODU was fun, and a lot of it was fun. The coaches most of the time are in their meetings or they out recruiting, doing whatever. So most of the time we got to spend in the office. It'll be with, the student assistants and the GAs. And, Ian used to come in Coach Z office and ask if he needed anything or something like that. And I'll mock him, and he'll be like, God dang, Gerard. So I used to mess with him all the time, but it was some fun times in that office, obviously with Shane too. Being in the office with those guys, it's like we was all learning at one time. They was learning how to become coaches and stuff like that. And they were basically telling us what, they were learning in the film meeting. So when we watch a film, Shane sometimes he'll tell me some things like what the quarterback's looking for. So that'll help me. I like to look at the game from a quarterback's eye whether I'm a coach, whether I'm a player. I always wanted to look at the game I want to know exactly what everybody has to do,
right?
So that I'm able to coach any position. Obviously, I don't know everything, but I feel like I have enough knowledge to be able to touch on in every position. That's because of how I learned football between Coach Taylor at Meadowbrook and at ODU. Just that film, like we drilled it so much. Coach Taylor, he'll be like, here you go, man. You got right up cover 3. All right, so this is what they're doing in cover 3 right here. So his corner's backing out here. He'll be able to do this, and I'm like, all I got it. But then eventually I started catching on. It's like, oh, now I know what he's saying because the game started getting. And Coach Taylor told me one thing that I tell my quarterbacks, and I can see this that they do it in the NFL. He said, if they're playing man to man, everybody's covering a receiver or the running backs. Who's covering you? And that was one. That's how I learned man to man. And then he told how I learned cover three. Then Woody used to run cover three a lot. So he used to tell me, all right, this is how you know cover three. The safety of the corners, I turn a certain way. And so it was small ways that I learned it, but eventually it started progressing. But based off that foundation, I took that, with me. But yeah.
It's crazy. The first Meadowbrook game that you saw was when they lost in overtime, and the first time Dinwiddie beat Meadowbrook, in a long time. But then the first time that you became the quarterback was against Dinwiddie, sophomore year. And
yeah.
What I told the team.
Yeah, no, Coach, we was at halftime. I think we was down 21-3. We was down by a pretty decent amount. I was a sophomore in, and this who they had on their team. Chris Hall was their quarterback. Corey Marshall was the DN. They had a great running back at the time. Obviously,
Darius Williams.
Oh, Cedarius Williams, man, Cedarius was a dog. They had receivers. They had Buck. Buck was the receiver. They had Dre Carr, who's an agent now, who's representing people trying to go professional. But we were down by a decent amount, and I was looking at these dudes. I'm like, they lift weights. And his brother, funny story, his brother was like, it was a timeout, and the field was quiet. And Corey Marshall had been killing us. He had been killing us. And he was like, block the dude that's going to Virginia Tech. And so he did like the Superman, the Cam Newton thing like this. And the very next play, Coach Taylor called it was bootleg. And the tackle, of course, let him go free again. And he came upfield. And I was like, oh, I got to get rid of this. But we was down at halftime, and he put me in the game, and I was like, out of all times, you want to put me in the game now? But we ended up the first drive.
I told everybody at halftime, I said, don't y'all get don't be surprised if I make a change.
And no, but that changed.
It worked out for you.
Yeah, I was like, now I can run my offense.
No, it was fun though, man. I appreciate all of it. All those experiences that I had, obviously, helped me to get to, where I'm at today. Everybody that I learned from, Coach Scott down at ODU, offensive coordinator, seeing the game from a passing perspective. Then I get to Norfolk State, Coach Latrell Scott, he ran the West Coast offense. So I got to see the West Coast offense. That was something different because I ain't see that at ODU being in the spread. I learned the wing T being in high school, so I dibbled and dabbed in all different offenses and stuff. So that's been helping me while I'm coaching now. And I use a lot of that in how I coach, trying to put my offense together and trying to figure out how I want my identity of my team to be. And so I just took a lot of, what I learned over the years and implemented it into now. Obviously, tailored to the kids that we have, but it's been a good run. You know what I'm saying? Like Ian said, I enjoyed every moment of it. Those moments that we had at ODU really, set it off for me. So I appreciate it all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate y'all. Anything else y'all want to say before we get off here, or how people can get in contact with y'all?
Yeah, you can contact me on Twitter, Coach Gerard Johnson, on Facebook, Gerard Johnson, and on Instagram, Coach GJ. Or you can also email me at gjohnson@ccps.
Oh, here we go. Here's my buddy, Daquan Chapman.
Oh, Chapman. Chapman was on the Chapman was a senior when I was a freshman in high school. He was on one. They was some dogs on that line that year.
Coach Bill D recruited him to Christopher Newport. And Coach Bill D said, Troy, I just need him to take the ACT. And I was like, well, what's he got to get? He goes, he just has to take it. So I take the ACT, didn't I? Coach D didn't care what you got because you was gonna get in if you took the ACT.
He's gonna find a way, that's for sure.
All right, Ian, you got anything else you want to say? Or
I appreciate you having me on. G again, man.
Definitely.
I enjoyed it. I'm on Twitter, PQ_HBC. I'm a Steve Spurrier guy, head ball coach. Instagram, Rapanick. And then Facebook, Ian Rapanick. And probably the best way to reach me. I check my email when I'm at school, but other than that, I don't know a whole lot. But always willing to help out if anybody. If I can help at all, definitely willing to. But I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate you having me on. G, again, man, it was awesome to see you, brother.
Yes, sir, bro.
Thank y'all.
We'll catch up one of these times.
Appreciate you, Coach.
See y'all.
Appreciate it, Coach.